Hey guys, what's up? It's Marksman from Marksman's Music Academy, and today I'm going to show you how you can make your pianos sound super pro, from taking it from sounding like this to sounding like this. You ideally want your pianos to have a lot of detail and flavor to them, rather than sounding like a 5-year-old is just smashing the keys with no finesse at all. However, you might not be a pianist, that's cool. I am not a pianist either. I have played back in the day, but I was not any good. But we want to try and emulate that, so I'm going to show you some tips and techniques you can do to get a really nice, delicate piano feel filled with emotion in your tracks. So, before we hop into Ableton, please do press the like and subscribe button and hit that bell notification so you don't miss a beat. Really helps me out, takes you 2 seconds, and doesn't cost you a thing. And I will love you forever. Let's hop into Ableton. So here we are in Ableton, and I have this remix which is coming up for a release on my label Elevation for the amazing Seismic. They're a really up-and-coming producer duo. They got some phenomenal tracks. But anyway, I hopped on the remix for their release, and this is what we're dealing with so far. So this is kind of like the break section, and what I've got here is I've got a pro version and the amateur version, which you would have heard in the intro on this track, but this is the pro version in context of the mix. So nice and delicate. But if we swap that out to the amateur version, so what you're hearing a substantial difference between the timbre and the way that the piano is being played. And let's just dive straight into the MIDI. Now, if you're programming piano yourselves, like as I said, I'm not a piano player, so I drew all of these in. But this is kind of what a amateur piano would look like. You see, they're just block chords all playing at the same velocity. And same with the melody. Like we've got this melody here, which is playing over the top. And it's all the same velocity. There's not really any detail and finesse to the melody. So if we just hone in on this, it sounds kind of like a 5-year-old is just hammering all the keys. It's very robotic as well. It doesn't feel like a professional is playing it, compared to this. It's a lot more subtle and detailed. Right? So let's just dive into the differences here. So this is our original MIDI. You can see everything is exactly on the grid. Everything's exactly the same velocity. It's just got no character or flavor to it. But if you open up the Pro version here, what you'll see is that I've actually turned the velocity down substantially for all of it. So it's a bit softer. But more importantly here, I've dragged the notes slightly off the grid. So the first note is mostly in time, but then the higher notes then are slightly out of time with the rest. So that's basically emulating when a pianist will play a chord, not every note is going to be hit at exactly the same time. It's going to go, rather than going like, it's going to go, if that makes sense. So that's what I've done here, like slightly dragged off the notes, but also changed the velocity slightly of each of the notes. So I have the bass note here, and then the rest of the chord here is like slightly lower in velocity. Kind of randomly, I've just kind of done this. What I've done is I clicked a note, pressed Command on Mac or Control, I believe, on Windows, and you just click and drag and you can change the velocity like so. Have it a little bit more subtle and delicate on certain notes. And again, shifted the notes off the grid for the next chord, changed the velocities, then have a little ghost note here, similarly. And same thing, basically, just kind of shifting those notes off the grid and changing the velocity. It makes such a huge difference. Now, similarly with the melody here, we have like different velocities, mostly played softly as well. So it's got a bit more flavor and feel to it, rather than just hammering those notes. And then certain notes are accented as well, like dun, 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 like with the changes in velocity. So I've programmed all of this in manually. Now, if you are a good piano player, you could probably just do this anyway and play it naturally, but I'm not a piano player, I'm a guitarist. So I had to do this, and to get that really nice, delicate feel, that's what you've got to do. It's a fairly simple technique. It doesn't take you too long to do, but it really does make all the difference. Now, let's look at the mixing. So for the amateur version, I've just kind of had it a stock mixing version. So all of the effects and mixing goodies are turned off, but let's just dive into how we can make a piano sound really nice. So what I've got here is an instance of Saturn, and there's a preset called Solid Piano, but with pianos, you need to be very, very careful with how much saturation, distortion, overdrive you're adding. It's best to do it very, very subtly. So as you can see here, I've got this set to only about 13.9% wet. And then I've also included a second instance here of a slightly different piano preset, which is at 20% dry wet. So let's just A/B these together. So this is without it, compared to with it. Very subtle, but just slightly brings the notes to life a little bit more. I've also rolled off a lot of the lows here because the bass is going to clash with these notes when it does come in. So I've rolled that off. And there's quite a little bit of like hammering notes and resonances, usually around the sort of 800 hertz range. So I've done a little dip here just to help it sit better in the mix and sound a little bit nicer. I then added a little bit of compression here to the piano. So let's just A/B this compared to this. Just makes the notes sound a whole lot more cohesive. Now, particularly because I've turned the velocity down quite a substantial amount, compressing the notes together is going to make them still feel delicate, but not have too much variation in the loudness. So you can still hear all the quiet notes, but they still have that delicate touch, okay? And then I also add my favorite Gullfoss here, which just really brings the sound to life. So let's A/B this compared to this. Just adds so much detail. Gullfoss is such an amazing plugin. It's so easy to do. You basically just crank up this tame and recover, and you're good to go. Then a little bit more EQ just to roll off anything that I might have brought in. I add a little bit of echo in parallel. So check this out. Compared to about this. Just gives it a little bit more depth. And then, of course, a bit of reverb here also in parallel, where I am basically rolling off a lot of the lows and a lot of the highs to give such a nice space tone, but not getting too much clutter in the top end by cutting off the highs and rolling out the lows to remove muddiness. And that's basically it. So let's just compare this mixing chain A/B. I'll do it volume matched as well, compared to with. Like, the difference is absolutely substantial, I would say. So that's how you can create some really amazing, delicate piano sounds. So there you have it. It's pretty straightforward. Basically, drag some notes off the grid and change the velocity to emulate a real piano playing it, because not every note is going to be hit exactly the same velocity. Not every note is going to be hit exactly in time. And go more delicate, I would say. Have lower velocity, and that gives you a lot more emotive feel to both your melodies and your chords. However, of course, we need to bring the sounds to life with mixing by using some gentle saturation in very low quantities, and multiple in parallel tends to work better than one in a higher dry wet. One with more wetness, use multiple in low dry wetnesses. Then roll off some of the lows, roll off some of the nasty resonances in the 800 hertz. Add a smidge of compression just to make sure that the delicate notes don't get lost in the mix. And then a little bit of depth with echo and reverb, and that can really bring your sounds to life. That's how you make some really emotive piano sounds in your productions, even if you're not a pianist. It takes a couple minutes to go that extra mile, which can really take your sounds from sounding super robotic and heavy to really beautiful and delicate in a couple of simple steps, and you'll have an amazing, beautiful piano sound, which people are gonna love and bring a tear to their eyes. Probably, maybe. Well, hope you've enjoyed the video. Drop a comment below what you found the most helpful, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, join my Produce Like a Pro Facebook group community. It is an awesome place. We do weekly track feedback calls on Thursdays for free, every Thursday at 4 p.m. And we also post a lot of amazing content that I don't post on YouTube. So it's a really good place to network, collaborate, and learn some new skills. Plus, I'd love to see you in there. Hope you enjoyed the video and see you in the next one.